Welcome back to another session of Making Sense of Scripture. I hope you continue to enjoy this series. I want to thank you for staying engaged. My hope is that this series continues not only to raise lots of good questions for us, but again, the whole purpose is to provide a framework to understand what this book is and how it works in our life and in our faith. Well, today we're coming to the question, is there a center to Scripture? I love to read, and not long ago I read a novel, and I found the novel really confusing because in the first chapter it began a certain plot line, and in the second chapter it began an entirely new plot line, and in the third chapter yet another entirely different plot line. By the end of the third chapter I was utterly confused about where this book was going. And in fact, it wasn't until the end of the story that all of those plot lines came together to bring some sense of resolution. And I find that for many of us, reading the Bible is sort of like my experience of beginning to read this novel. We know that the Bible is made up of many different books that tell many different stories over the course of a lot of history. And it can seem as if there are so many plot lines, we really don't know what the center is. But the Bible really does have a center. And in fact, in any good story, the center plot line almost has to do with some kind of conflict, something that needs resolution, and the resolution itself. And I would say that's true for the Bible as well. For Lutheran Christians, the center of the Bible is what God is going to do about the problem of sin in the world. The center storyline of the Bible is the gospel. The good news that though we are dead in sin, through the grace of God, through the cross and the resurrection, we've been set free from sin and death to live a whole new life. Now, we framed that in the sermon this week through John 3:16. Now, maybe you, like me, had one understanding of John 3:16 and heard it in a different light in the weekend sermon. But I would suggest to you that the heart of the gospel, the center of the Bible, is the ongoing story of the problem of sin, our straying from God, God's longing to be in relationship with us, and how the good news of the gospel of Christ's love proclaimed on the cross and his victory over sin and death in the resurrection is the very heart of the story. A story that begins with creation, and a story that ends with the consummation of God's dream in Revelation 21 and 22. And I think if we read Scripture through the lens of God's unending love, God's heart to redeem, to reconcile, to restore all of creation, we will find that as a golden thread woven through the entire story from beginning to end. And sometimes knowing that center can help us to make sense of some of the things that seem awfully confusing throughout the rest of the story. So I encourage you to have great conversation in your session with your small group and to discuss what that center is for you and, more importantly, what it means for you. Enjoy.